Hello and welcome to the Idaho Reports podcast. I'm Logan Finney. Joining us this week is Fire Bureau Chief with the Idaho Department of Lands, Josh Harvey, to talk about the 2024 fire season. Chief Harvey, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Hey, thanks, Logan. I appreciate the invite. Awesome to be here with you this morning.
You as well. So just to put things in context for us, what was the 2024 fire season like? We're here talking at the tail end of October, so obviously things are not completely set in stone, but it's kind of that time of year where fire season seems to be wrapping up. Give us the context to what this year was like.
Yeah, well, looking back on it, looking out of my window right now, and it's raining here in North Idaho. I definitely hope it's raining there in South Idaho. This fire season was well above average for us. We've had over 320 wildfires this year. In the last 5 years, 2021 was really kind of a banner year. We were pushing, something like 380 fires in 2021. Well over 100,000 acres burned in 21. This year, our acreage is quite a bit smaller than that. I think we're sitting at about 65,000 acres burned this year. Um, it was a little bit different of a year. North Idaho jumped into fire season with both feet early. In July, North Idaho was really busy. Um, and it was a split between human caused and lightning fires early on. But South Idaho, Central Idaho, and South Idaho really took the cake to close out fire season. A lot of big fires that made the news: the Wapiti Fire, the Valley Fire, the West Mountain Complex, Lava Fire. There's just some big banner fires that were on the landscape for weeks on end. The public was feeling the smoke, the air quality issues that were going, across the southern part of the state. And that all combined with Oregon and Washington having some pretty epic fire years as well. So air quality was a big impact. Recreation in some very highly recreated lands in the southern part of the state were definitely impacted. So I know our firefighters felt it. I felt it, my staff, but I know the public was definitely feeling the impacts from fire season this year.
The responsibilities when it comes to fighting fire in Idaho, it kind of depends on where the fire starts, who's responsible for the land that it's on. When you guys are first called out to a fire and you don't necessarily have all the details yet, what's kind of the first chunk of that response look like as you guys are getting out there into the field?
So Idaho's a pretty cool state. We have good interagency relationships with our Forest Service partners, BLM partners, and tribe. We're basically the four entities that have, call it 99% of the wildland fire responsibility in the state of Idaho. And we have an agreement called the Master Fire Co-op Agreement, and it lays out how we're going to respond to a fire start. And within the state we have, and within that agreement, we have a mutual aid agreement. And basically, at the most basic level, what that agreement says is whoever is closest is going to respond every time, all the time. Okay. And so it doesn't matter if the fire starts on private property, doesn't matter if the fire starts on, Forest Service land. If my red engine is closest to the federal fire, it's going to respond. If a green engine or a yellow engine is closest to a fire on private property, they're going to respond. Determining who's actually the responsible agency for that fire comes down to a relatively simple mapping exercise that generally occurs with the local district's duty officer and our dispatch center folks. They plot the map, plot the initial call of the fire on a map, and it'll be tentatively assigned. If it looks like it's right on the border, they may wait until resources are on scene. They'll get a latitude, longitude with the GPS. Dispatch will pinpoint it on the map, and the determination will really be made there is, okay, this is a U.S. Forest Service fire. This is an Idaho Department of Lands fire. They're the responsible agency for that. And so then that really kicks off a whole bunch of things, ordering resources, ordering more engines, more aircraft, just putting all the tools in motion to fight fire. But we've also automated that process a little bit. And so during the peak of fire season, if a fire call comes in, we've already built response cards within our dispatch center. So just call it August 15th, Grangeville, Idaho. It's going to be 100 degrees. Everything's dry. It's all ready to burn. And so that response card is probably going to be set up that it's going to be a heavy response, which is going to automatically launch, three engines, a helicopter, air attack, and it's going to put fixed wing retardant tankers on standby, right? And so um, our incident commanders, when they get on scene or maybe they see the smoke, they can say, yes, send absolutely everything. It might already be in the air because dispatch can see the column of smoke out their window, or we want to be responsible with taxpayer dollars. And so when those ICs are rolling up, it's like, hey, don't launch the retardant. We don't need the helicopter on this one. Stand down one of the engines. We got this one. No big deal, right? So there's lots of layers of coordination. There's a lot of preseason prep that goes into planning fire response. And there's going to be a lot of work going into the wintertime where we take a hard look at our processes and our responses through the summer and dial in on, okay, what worked? What didn't work? Why didn't it work? What do we need to change, right? What do we need to make adjustments to? So we've got a full, fire season used to be like 4 months out of the year. Anymore, fire season is a 12 months. It's a full year. We're fighting fire a full year. And for 6 months of that, we might be fighting fire with email and paperwork, but we got to do all that stuff. We got to do that stuff to be ready for the next year. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Of course, all this game planning and preparation is incredibly important. But fire is a live situation. So how do you decide in the more long term what sort of resources will need assigned to a fire? We mentioned the West Mountain Complex, and that included active duty military firefighters this year, which is not something that at least I'm used to seeing super often. So how do you make that type of calculus?
So Idaho plays a pretty significant role across the nation, right? You call it the wildfire crisis, but all of the states, all of the wildland firefighting partners, we're a part of a national interagency system. And so within that system, there's only so much capacity. There's something like a total of 39,000 firefighters, wildland firefighters. Okay. And it might not even be that high, but when we start getting a lot of fire on the landscape and we start tapping into all of our contracting resources, all of our fire department resources, our agency resources are tapped, right? They're doing initial attack. They're on fires for 3, 4, 5 days in a row. When we start getting into a situation where fires are getting larger, we're getting more fires on the landscape, but there aren't any more resources within our system to assign to those fires. That's really where we start. The conversation happens at a very high level about engaging National Guard, about engaging the active duty military. And you're right, it doesn't happen very often. I think it's only been a couple of times in the last 25 years, 26 years that I've been fighting fire that's happened. But we, as a just take an individual fire on Idaho Department of Lands Protection, we have a type 3 incident management team. So it's a group of about 20, 25 people. And let's just say we get a couple 100-acre fire out there on the landscape. Our local district is going to say, hey, our resources are tapped. As a fire warden, as a manager, I can't manage this fire. I'm going to put a request in to have this team come in and take over that fire. So our type 3 team can respond, and that's a finance person, it's an incident commander, it's safety, it's some operations people, maybe an aviation supervisor type person. They come in, they set up camp, and they start managing the people and the equipment needed to fight that fire, right? Heavy equipment, dozers, excavators, water tenders, more engines, hand crews, hot shot crews, stuff like that. because you got to feed all those people. You got to make sure they get paid. You got to make sure they have medical access to medical, and injuries happen. So we got to be able to take care of our folks. Um, but what happens, at that type 3 level, let's just say that fire takes off. We have a red flag day, the wind blows, bam, it takes off for another 1,000 acres, or, in the case of like lava, Wapiti, West Mountain Complex, huge, huge fire days. 50, 60,000 acres get chewed up in one day, right?
Things change very quickly out there. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you got to scale up to meet the fire. And so that can be going from, you got 100 firefighters on a 400-acre fire, 500-acre fire, to needing 1,000, 1,500 firefighters. And, those firefighters are going to need to be there longer than 2 weeks, or, a month, or, 6 weeks in the case of, like Wapiti, right? So beyond that type 3, they can only handle so many people. They can only feed so many people. So within the national system, we have what's called complex incident management teams. And those teams are scalable to meet the need of the fire. Just call it 80 to 100 people is going to show up with this organized team. They're going to set up basically a little tent city and bring in the resources needed to fight that fire, and plan to be there, for at least 2 weeks. And then we rotate them out. But within that national system, the capacity, there's only like 41 or 42 complex incident management teams in the system. We had on any given day, like 50 large fires on the landscape. So some of those fires were extremely large and being managed by local districts that weren't staffed, didn't have the capability to do it. So it provides really a lot of challenges in today's environment to fight fire, and manage fire successfully. So the urban interface in there, all the way Idaho's grown, um, our towns have definitely crept out. Our communities have crept out. They're bordering Forest Service lands, state lands, active industrial timberlands. They're at risk. They're really at risk from fire. And so, that presents a hazard to our firefighters when you're talking about natural gas lines, power lines, the additional traffic, the livestock, and just all the hazmat type stuff that comes from structures and that living environment. So, extremely challenging to fight fire in Idaho.
We've talked about this coordination that you do with the other fire agencies, and Idaho is kind of unique in that we're home to the National Interagency Fire Center based in Boise, so we're kind of a hub for those sort of resources. What about other agencies and groups that are not explicitly fire related? How much coordination do you do with other folks around the state? I'm thinking of specifically from here in Boise over the state line in Oregon, the Durkee fire closed down part of the interstate for a while there. We've referenced the Wapiti fire, which was kind of the really big headline fire that had that part of the highway closed there for a while. Are you guys talking to transportation managers and other agency folks like that about how the fires impact other things that are going on in our state?
Oh, absolutely. So whether you call it like a sister agency or, one of our other key important agencies within the state, IOEM, Idaho's Office of Emergency Management, they play a key role. We do have agreements with DOT, Fish and Game, parks, health and welfare. But IOEM tends to be they tend to be a hub when we have a true emergency where we're talking like a declaration. Idaho, we're declaring that this fire is an emergency. Infrastructure is threatened, houses are threatened, we're closing down highways, potentially railroads, bridges are going to be impacted. We work really closely with IOEM to make sure that all of our partners are in communication, in coordination to providing a response, and not only just the response part, but also making sure that the public can get in and out of their homes as soon as possible. We're coordinating with DOT to get flaggers on roads, to open up roads so we can have that commerce, have that traffic, um, continuing when it's safe. And they understand that. The local sheriffs are really great to work with for the most part. They understand, life safety comes first. We put our firefighters' safety first, but the public is right there. And we don't want anybody we if we get in too big of a hurry, open up a highway, um, and the highway, the trees that maybe were burned or are burning, start to fall down, come down, rocks get knocked loose. We don't want to have those instances where we could have prevented a significant injury or a fatality by being more cautious than not. And that's something that, we have to ask the public, please be patient and understand. We know that you want to continue with your summer recreation plans. We know that you want to get back into your homes. I'm in the same boat. All of our folks are in the same boat, right? But we don't want them to get hurt. And there's things that we know could and have happened that they're not aware of. And so we proceed very cautiously with that type of stuff. So it's important that we coordinate with all of our state agencies. We're all putting the public first.
Certain fires obviously stick in people's minds, especially if they're right in their backyard or they happen to be breathing all the smoke from one particular fire. But zooming out and looking at the big picture, we referenced how in your 25 years of fighting fire, it's not often that we see active military being brought out to fight fires like this. Um, we think of 2021 as the most recent kind of banner fire year. We also referenced that it's becoming a fire year instead of a fire season. Is this part of a long-term trend that you guys have been seeing at Department of Lands, that fires are getting bigger and more destructive and more frequent? Or give me the big picture view on fire in Idaho.
Yeah, so I think you're hitting something right on, you're hitting the nail right on the head. As the state gets bigger, and when we talk about bigger, that's, that population increase, the number of people moving out into that urban interface. We go through weather cycles, weather patterns across the globe, and slight changes have an impact on fire season. So we've got our natural fires, which is lightning. In Idaho, it's almost strictly lightning. And then on the other side, we have the human factors, those preventable type fires.
Campfires that
And
weren't put out, chains on a trailer dragging and causing sparks, those types of
yep,
things.
yep, absolutely right. And sometimes it's just something as simple as, we got a farmer that's welding a fence and it happens, right? That hot slag hits the grass, bam, there it goes. Um, so we've got kind of two factors that are running parallel to each other. Lightning is what it is. We can't control that. Weather cycles are what they are. It comes in trends, 10 to 15-year trends. We'll get more fire, every 10 years for a couple, 2 or 3 years, and then it'll kind of fade away. And then it comes back, right? And we got to think long term. Um, is there something to the whole climate change discussion? I'm not a scientist. I don't go into there. But again, with those natural weather patterns, we are getting there is more length to our fire season. A little bit warmer, a little bit drier summers. We've had this drought going on across the state of Idaho, across the Pacific Northwest for the last, oh man, I hope not misquote, but at 7 to 10 years, we've had some issues. But where the big factor really comes in and what's bringing all these fires to the attention is that urban interface piece. Fires are becoming more impactful and more destructive because we, as a population, are living a lot closer to where those fires occurred historically that may have went unnoticed, or didn't have the impact that it currently does. And so with, people moving out into the beautiful landscape of Idaho, we're setting ourselves up for a higher level of threat from, just call it oopsie fires, right? I mean, we've got dumb fires. We've got some fires where it was like, man, that was just straight up dumb. But then there's just those oopsies. There's the truck that blows up because they were going up the Whitebird grade pulling some cattle. I mean, you just never know, right? There's those things that happen. But those number of fires continually increases. And that's the trend that has me the most concerned. Those preventable fires are not going down, and it's just continually rising. And we're seeing human caused fires earlier in the year, We're seeing human caused fires later in the year, which is throwing an additional strain on our system. The firefighters are living out in the dirt on the side of a mountain for weeks on end through what should be the normal fire season, but now they're expected to do that longer into the fall or earlier into the year, right? So we get a lot of fatigue, a lot of extra stress on those folks because they want to get home too. They want to see their families, right? So that's my biggest concern going forward is that as we go in and out of these active lightning cycles, those years where we see a really impactful lightning year, we have high numbers of naturally caused fires, but then we continually have this upward trend of human caused fires. Those are the years where, we as agencies, we can't keep up. There's not enough capacity in the system to do it. We already struggle to hire and retain firefighters just for what would be considered, a normal fire year, much less years like this year, 21, 2015. You can never put enough firefighters on the ground to fight all those fires. I mean, some of those fires, man, there's nothing you can do about it. They're gonna get up, they're gonna roar, and you
I
just
mean,
try
there
to
are some
move people
places
out
in
of the
Idaho you can't even get to, I
yeah, and
imagine.
you can't get to some of them, right? Um, but it's that my appeal, that's my appeal to the public of Idaho, to all of your listeners, is that it's like take the extra step to think before you leave your campsite, think about when you're getting ready to haul maybe an oversized load in the back of your truck that's going to put a lot of strain on your vehicle, the chains, the activities going on, repairing equipment in the woods, repairing fence lines, burn barrel type stuff. It's my right as an Idahoan. I want to go burn my garbage. I want to burn my yard debris, right? I want my place to look nice. Well, probably not a good idea to do that on July 15th or August 1st. Can it wait? Those are the things, it's totally preventable. So many of those fires are totally preventable. Huge impact. And it puts our firefighters at risk. You know, fighting fire is it's a dangerous business. Super, one of the old timers call him a crusty old firefighter. He's like, fighting fire is a full contact sport. And there's no doubt, we have firefighters injured every year. Firefighters get killed every year. And it's one thing when it's lightning caused, you never want a loss of life, but it's another thing when that fire was 100% completely preventable, never needed to happen, you know. So sorry, I'll get off my soapbox on that one, but it's a big deal to me, you know. Nothing you can do about lightning, right? But those human caused fires, they don't need to happen.
Absolutely. So that's some of the stuff the public can do to help prevent those human caused fires. Another section of our audience, fortunately for us here at Idaho Reports, are lawmakers, policymakers. It's been in the discussion at the state level and at the national level. Compensation for firefighters, like you said,
Yeah.
this is a hard job. Have you seen the state and the lawmakers who hold those purse strings? Have they been receptive to the needs that Idaho has to ensure we have firefighting resources? What's the conversation been like there?
So yes, it's a challenge. Look at the economy across the nation as a whole. You can get a job at Burger King, flipping burgers, day shift manager, nothing against it, right? Um, 16, 17, $18 an hour. Our entry level firefighters are in that 15 and a half, $16 an hour range. So if you had a choice, you got to make some money to go pay for college, and you don't understand how hazard pay works and maybe overtime, the amount of hours that you can get, that initial sticker right there, well, I know which one's going to be easier, which one's going to be a little more flexible, right? I don't have to work
A little
every
less
Saturday
dangerous.
and Sunday for the next 3 months and put in 200 hours, in a pay period. Um, it's a challenge to compete with those opportunities that are out there. Everybody's hiring. You can't drive down Boise or Coeur d'Alene and not see you know looking for employees type of sign, right? Offering benefits and competitive wages and all that sort of stuff. So from a lawmaker standpoint, I think the Idaho legislature has been supportive the best they can. We're a conservative state, right? Nobody likes to pay extra taxes. And so that's really the challenge is, if we're going to be kicking up wages, which would make us more competitive, it's going to attract more people. Um, there something somewhere has to give. You can't, Idaho's a constitutionally mandated state. We will have a balanced budget. So we can't throw in an extra $5 million to pay our firefighters more money. That money's got to come from somewhere, right? We can't just write a check. We're not federal government. Can't print our own money. But we're also competing with the federal government. They do pay their firefighters a little bit more. They're getting bonuses. They're doing some of these other things. And so it's a challenge. I think the legislature is aware of that. I think they're very aware that as a state organization, we fight fire very aggressively. We're very good at what we do. We're very safe at what we do, and we have a very positive reputation within the state and our public. They see that, they hear that. We're moving forward with discussions with the governor. We're doing some things with legislative representatives. We're expressing that need. And so I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful we gain some traction. I know the state of Montana just recently moved their entry-level firefighters to $19 an hour, 19 and change. That's a target for me. It's like, hey, here's a neighboring state. They got similar responsibilities as us. Is that something that we can shoot for? Is that reasonable? It does have an effect, right? We gotta check our whole pay scale for all of our folks that are in fire management to make sure they're getting paid appropriately. But as an agency, I think we're doing, a lot. Maybe not everything that we can, but we're doing as much as we can to compensate our firefighters. With hazard pay, when they're on the fire line, they're getting an extra 25%, on top of maybe that overtime and whatnot. And we try to make it so that Department of Lands is a good place to work. We want people to come back, and we want them to, those seasonals. We know we're going to lose seasonals. They're going to go to college. They're going to get their degree. They're going to move into whatever field it is that they're trying to pay to get into. But if we can retain, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those a year that are looking to turn wildland fire into a career, those are the people we want to hold on to. And really, it does make it so that we as a state, we got to pay those people a wage that they can raise a family on. They can live in their community with the benefits and raise those families, right? Because we're looking at our assistant wardens being 24, 25 years old. You don't have to wait a super long time for a permanent job that has full-time benefits, but you still got to be able to buy milk, bread, and eggs, right? And pay rent and that sort of thing. So lots more discussions going forward. Conservative states are always challenging to work in, but you're trying to get a nickel out of a place where there's probably only a penny, but there's a reason we all want to live here, and that's low taxes and the beautiful environment. So it's a mix of our folks wanting to meet the agency mission and protect our environment, protect the natural resources of Idaho, but that whole tax side of thing is also kind of nice as well. So it's a challenge.
All right. Josh Harvey, Fire Bureau Chief with the Idaho Department of Lands. Thanks for making time to speak with us.
Logan, I appreciate it, man. Great conversation, and I'm available whenever you need.
Programming support is provided by the Idaho Humanities Council, deepening understanding of the shared human experience by connecting people with ideas and local public programs exploring history, law, literature, and citizenship through the humanities.
Presentation of Idaho Reports on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho. By the Friends of Idaho Public Television, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.